Let's kiki on this interesting story. So grab a tissue and hold on to your wig because this one's a heartbreaker. The Vivienne, our fierce drag race UK queen and all-around legend, was this close to hitting Broadway before their untimely passing at 32. Their manager, Simon Jones, spilled the tea on All Out with John Dean, sharing how the duo was plotting superstardom, with Viv eyeing West End domination. But ketamine-related cardiac arrest tragically cut that dream short. While we're still mourning, their family is channeling grief into good by raising awareness of substance abuse. Rest in power, Queen. You were Broadway bound and we all knew it. You are in that Broadway stage in the sky right now. What are we all talking about? Alan, so the Vivienne was like one of my favorite drag queens of all time. And I don't say that lightly with so many incredible drag queens that we have here in South Florida that we get to see on Drag Race and all of that. And with their untimely death at the beginning of this year, I thought, you know, what happens to many people when people unfortunately overdose on something, their family usually says they died in their sleep. And then they never say what happens, right? And I understand that there's huge shame and there's, you know, even some embarrassment to some family members, and other family members probably didn't even know the extent of their drug use, etc. But I think it's so important and such a wonderful thing when the family allows the legacy of someone's passing to really maybe help somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and it's, how do you make something not positive, but how do you make something out of a tragedy like this? I think the family is doing that in such a way that, you know, here's what happened. And look, in our community, we know this is a thing. We know it's a thing.
It happens all too often.
And it happens all too often. So, you know, we know one of the best ways is education, education, education. To have a family embrace that and say this will be their legacy. Here's what we're going to do. You know, I think it's brave. I think it's bold. I think it's part of what we as a community need to be doing. You know, it's like they had a plan. That's like the hardest part of this, right? Is, you know, reach for the stars, literally, right? West End to Broadway. They were talking Dancing on Ice. They were talking all these opportunities.
Yep.
And, you know, winner. And then, you know, something like this happens. And we've seen it here all too many times.
And we've seen it here. We've got an issue in our community where we really think that won't happen to us. Like, no, it won't happen to us, you know? They had dreams. You know, this wasn't a suicide. This wasn't, well, it's a slow suicide, actually, if you really think about it. If you're using drugs, it's a slow suicide. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that, right? And, oh, that hasn't happened to me. Hasn't happened to you yet.
Yes.
It's all those yets.
Yep. Well, it's it can happen to anybody but me. It's that mentality. And again, it comes down to education, right? Let's not ever be sorry to tell them that. Right?
Yeah.
Let's tell them that. Learn, understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because at minimum, be smart, right? You do that through education. We do that by sharing these stories, by telling people what's going on. We had a short film at Outshine in the fall that was, you know, filmed here in Miami. And it was, you know, some girls, they were running simple drugs and it seemed very innocent. And then it was different drugs. And then there was fentanyl involved and then people died. Yeah. You know, and we have, you know, hundreds of people watching this film and it's like, wake up, because this happens in real life.
Yeah, and it can happen to you.
And it can happen.
And I think that is what the family, the intention is, to let everybody know that this could happen to the Vivienne, who was on the break to her real big breakthrough. And she passed away, you know, and they passed away, and it could happen. And like Alan said, you know, fentanyl's in everything down here. Okay, my wife works at Jackson, and she says the amount of people that come in there all the time, and it doesn't matter. You think you're smoking your weed and you're okay. It's even in weed, folks. You know, So listen, like Alan said, educate yourself, right? Know what you're doing, right? The reality is that our community is not going to stop using drugs or drinking. We're not.
Right. We're not chasing an endorsement here.
No.
But I think we know, and I think almost everybody can look back, and I've got people that have been in my life in the past 30 years, right, that I've watched go down these paths and what happens. And, you know, we know the last thing anybody wants to hear is stop it, right? And of course, but learn, be smart, educate, at minimum. Right? I think that's the bare minimum we got to talk about.
Yep, 100%.
And, you know, from there, it's to start down the right path. You know?
Yep. This is an important conversation for our LGBTQ+ community.